collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up on the programme this week, well, of course, St Patrick's Day is just around the corner. There's a huge Irish community in Cyprus, and the Irish Embassy this year is expanding its programme of activities to take in Larnaca and Limassol, as well as new events in Nicosia.
The opportunity of St Patrick's Day is a chance for us to promote Ireland wherever we are around the world. And this year here in Cyprus we have a few additional events to our normal programme.
And with the theme of women in peace and security, we'll talk to one of the panellists at an event held earlier this week on the leadership trio of UNFICYP. We'll talk to the senior police advisor, one of 3 leading women in the United Nations force in Cyprus, about women in policing.
I think we bring another sense. Even for me, I consider myself as a tough woman. If, God forbid, I was raped or I was a victim of domestic violence, if I was going to report that, I would feel more comfortable to talk about these things with a female police officer, because we kind of understand each other just by doing that. I also believe that women, we are kind of stronger in the soft approach.
Well, March, if you hail from the Emerald Isle, is probably the most important month of the year, and the Irish Embassy in Nicosia has a huge schedule of events for the month of March, starting today on the 1st with a festival of Oscar Wilde. But there's much more coming up, and joining us to tell us all about the plans is the Irish Ambassador to Nicosia, Deirdre Ní Alún. Deirdre, tell us first of all what the whole programme entails, and then let's go through bit by bit, because there's something all over Cyprus pretty well.
Yes, thanks Rosie. This is a very busy time of year for us, as you say. The opportunity of St Patrick's Day is a chance for us to promote Ireland wherever we are around the world. And this year here in Cyprus we have a few additional events to our normal programme. First of all, we have an Oscar Wilde festival, which will run through the first 2 weeks of March. It's a very exciting initiative proposed by some local artists and performers here, in fact, and one which I'm delighted to support. The programme is very varied. There are performances, film screenings, musical performances, and a roundtable literary event in the Solonian Bookshop. So I think a little bit of something for everyone in that programme. And I know the organisers will want me to say that all of the details are on a Facebook page, the Cyprus Oscar Wilde Festival Facebook page.
OK, can you tell us a bit more about the different performances and so on? Most people just think of Oscar Wilde as Oscar Wilde, OK, a poet, a playwright and whatever, but a man very much a catalyst of his times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the festival, in a way, there are aspects that will celebrate and remember his life as much as his art. He used to say that he treated his life as a piece of art. And in some ways he was that very modern thing. He was a celebrity before we knew what such a thing was. He had done extensive tours of the United States and become very famous for being famous, much to the chagrin of some of the other literary figures of the day. So we'll have some performances of some of his stories, The Star Child being one, that will take place in the Artos Foundation in Iasomolegites on the 15th and 16th of March. Also an event for children based around, a workshop for children based around his short story, The Devoted Friend, that will take place on the 16th of March in the Irish Embassy. And some screenings, 2 screenings that in a way are about aspects of his life. One is The Happy Prince, a film that was premiered last year, and this is a Cyprus premiere for that film. It will take place, we'll be screening it in the Cine Studio on the 13th of March, and that will look at the period in Wilde's life after his release from prison. So a sad period in his life. Before his death, he was unwell, and of course he'd suffered an enormous fall from grace and had left Britain in scandalous circumstances. We will also have the launch of the festival is tomorrow, the 2nd of March, and that will be in the Prozac Cafe, and it's an event called Jamming with Oscar, which will involve musicians and local artists responding to his work, and some nice performances planned. So it's a very varied programme. I'm not sure if I've covered it all, but all of the details are on Facebook.
A lot of people might think, if you're going to do this again next year, what about an actual full-length play?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I've been struck by is the long tradition of performances of Wilde's plays here in Cyprus. Indeed, his play Salome was first performed on the island in 1909 in translation in Larnaca. So there is a very long translation, and that's something I would definitely be interested in and would love to support, because many Cypriots have actually, something that was news to me as well, studied Wilde's plays in school here. So there's a huge level of knowledge, I think, and interest in his work. And of course the plays are much loved, so I would be delighted to support something like that. Maybe watch this space. Let's see what we can do for next year.
Let's come on to the other events, because you're spreading out to Larnaca for the first time, I think, this year. And of course then there's the greening of the old municipal building and the top of the old walls of Nicosia.
Yes, this is an initiative now that takes place all around the world on the occasion of St. Patrick's Day. And it's become a huge celebration of Ireland. The Great Wall of China and the Leaning Tower of Pisa and so on will all go green, and we're joining in the fun here in Nicosia. And we'll actually have an Irish government minister in town to help us launch the festivities. Our Defence Minister will be visiting, and he'll be engaging with his Cypriot counterpart here. So a little bit of politics along with all of the cultural celebrations. And then we'll have the ball in Limassol, which takes place every year, an Irish charity ball organised by the local community for some very good causes. That will be on the evening of the 16th. And for the first time this year, we wanted to do a family-themed event. And that will take place in Larnaca on Finicúdes Beach with the support of the municipality and the Mayor of Larnaca, for which we're very grateful. And we will have Irish musicians, Irish dancing, a little bit of river dance. We will have Irish food, maybe some drinks. And we're also bringing over some Irish sports stars to give demonstrations of our national games, especially hurling, which people here in Cyprus may not be very familiar with.
I don't think people all over the world are very familiar with it. It's a very fast game, isn't it?
It's a fast game. It's we like to say it's the fastest ground sport in the world. It's a very ancient traditional Celtic game, in fact. It dates back thousands of years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I always think of it as the Irish lacrosse.
Yeah, it's similar to lacrosse or hockey in the air, and so it should be a bit of fun to have that played on Finicúdes Beach for, I expect, probably for the first time. So, and this is really, it's for the Irish community, but of course it's also for our Cypriot friends, to give them a little bit of a taste and flavour of Ireland on the 17th of March, which is St. Patrick's Day itself.
Huge day, but can we go back to the greening? I'm fascinated to know where that idea came from, because it's gone on now, certainly in Nicosia. We joined a little later than some of the other big capitals of the world, but I think it's the 4th or 5th or maybe even 6th year we've done it now.
Yeah, it's run for the last few years. Well, we always had a tradition from the US of the guys in Chicago would dye the river green there, and then at one point in the Obama years, and I believe it was Mrs. Obama, Michelle Obama, who they arranged to dye the fountain in the White House green. And I think it just caught on from there, and we've now had iconic landmarks all over the world greened. And cynical people might say it's a little bit of a gimmick and so on, and I was somewhat sceptical myself, but I have to say it's a huge attraction for people, and it's something where people maybe are not very familiar with Ireland. It gives them a little hook to connect with the country and what's going on around St. Patrick's Day.
And that's important for you as an ambassador, is it not? I mean, to make sure that not just the friends of Ireland already, but people who perhaps don't know a great deal about the country maybe are tempted to go and find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things as a small country without a great deal of economic power. Our cultural diplomacy and our public diplomacy is very important to us. And we're fortunate in Ireland to have great attractions and a great wealth in terms of our landscape and our culture, and so this is a way, really a hook to get people interested and maybe considering then exploring some of our culture or even paying a visit to Ireland.
And that's important too. There are close ties already, but what about the touristic ties as well as the trade ties between Cyprus and Ireland?
Well, unfortunately, we did have a twice-weekly route with cobalt. So since the demise of that route, it's a little harder to travel between the two countries, but we still have Ryanair flying between Dublin and Paphos, and those flights are very busy. The majority of the tourism is inward into Cyprus. It remains a popular destination for Irish people, and for all the attractions of Ireland for a holiday, the one thing we don't have is sunshine.
But you have so much more.
Yeah, so we're trying to encourage people, and I think the things that people, certainly that Cypriots like about Ireland, are maybe some of those things we share around hospitality and enjoying each other's company over a drink and singing and music. And there's certainly plenty of that in Ireland.
The music is very much a tie, isn't it? If you see Cypriots getting together over their music, it's a very similar thing to the things you see in Ireland.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that reminds me of home while I'm here, is that same sense of the importance of music. I've met so many Cypriots who've studied music to a very high level, but even people who haven't tend to be very musically talented, and it's something that makes me feel at home here in Cyprus.
Since we're talking about Cyprus and Ireland, tell me too about the event that you've got, I think, in the buffer zone on the 4th of March, is it? With lessons from the Good Friday Agreement. Now, we had two ladies from the Women's Coalition in Ireland over, I think, at the end of last year. So is this a follow-on from that? What's going to be happening there?
Well, yes, as you say, we had two founder members of the Northern Ireland Women's Coalition here last September for a good visit and engagements with various people here in the island, especially women's groups, and this is a follow-on. It will be a report of their visit that we will launch, and we're also lucky to have with us on the evening Elizabeth Spihar will speak, but also most importantly I think the co-chairs of the Bicommunal Technical Committee on Gender Equality, which has been established since 2014. Both of those co-chairs will speak at the event, and they're going to talk a little bit about the work of that committee and its plans for the future.
And the fact that we have a female head of UNFICYP, I think a female head of the military side as well, and you're a female ambassador. There does seem to be a gender change over the last 2 or 3 years in not just the embassies, the consulates and so on, because we've got several women ambassadors here now, but also in UNFICYP, in the UN. What effect do you think that's having?
Well, I think the mission in Cyprus has made history in the last few weeks since the arrival of Major General Charalambous Pierce, as it now has an all-female leadership. The senior police advisor is also a woman, Anne Christine Kvigfeld from Norway. And as you say, we also, that's a priority, I know, of the UN Secretary-General, is to come as close as possible to a 50-50 split across the UN organisation. And as you say, there are a number of female ambassadors. We're now 12. And it's not just EU countries. Our Egyptian and Lebanese colleagues are women as well. So that's a sign of the times, I suppose. I mean, what they say about peace processes and political processes is that they are more effective. Peace processes are shown to be more sustainable when women are involved. And so if our presence here can in some way lend additional visibility to women or support to women in Cyprus, I think that's all to the good.
Well, let's get away from politics and back to the culture and the fun of March, Ireland and St Patrick's, where, apart from the Facebook page for the Oscar Wilde Festival, can people see the whole gamut of all the events, so they may want to join in, sign up, go to the ball or whatever. Is it on your website?
It's on our website, which is www.dfa.ie/Cyprus. We also have a newsletter we've launched just this month, so anyone who's interested can drop us a line and be added to the mailing list. And we've also set up a Facebook page for the embassy as well. So we're at Embassy of Ireland Cyprus on Facebook. And you can also follow the embassy or me myself on Twitter. We have 2 accounts there. So we're out there on social media and on mailing lists. But of course, if anyone wants more information, give us a call at the embassy.
And that is the Irish ambassador to Cyprus, Deirdre Ní Alún.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the 4th series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
On Wednesday afternoon in Old Nicosia, there was a panel discussion entitled Women in Peace and Security, the Leadership Trio of UNFICYP, a Global First. It was sponsored by the diplomatic missions of Australia, Canada and Norway, who said they were pleased to highlight that the UN peacekeeping force in Cyprus is the first UN peacekeeping mission which is both led by a woman and has women leading its police and military components. As they say, a global first in women, peace and security. Next week we'll be talking to the UN Secretary-General's Special Representative and Head of Mission, Elizabeth Spehar, and also to the newly arrived Force Commander, Major General Charalambous. But this week we speak to the Senior Police Advisor, Ann-Kristin Kvilikval, from Norway, about women in policing, and she started by telling me about her time in Cyprus.
My time in Cyprus, I've been here 1.5 years now. Very interesting time. Cyprus is interesting. I was not that informed about the Cyprus problem before I came here. And the more you know about the situation, it's getting more interesting, but also more challenging. It is a challenge. It's a challenge for me as a police officer to be on a place where the 2 police sides do not cooperate.
So what's your job, actually?
My job, I'm the head of police components. I have 69 international police officers under my command from 14 different nations. We do patrol in the buffer zone. We deal with the people in the buffer zone, we talk to them, and we try to control the buffer zone, and we do a lot of liaison and engagement between the two sides on police matters. So with police headquarters on the two sides, that's where we have our focus, to liaise and engage.
Of course, recently we've had encroachments in Strovilla. Are you involved with something like that? And if so, how do you go about dealing with it?
The Strovilla is, I have not been too much involved in that. That's the other part of the headquarters have dealt with Strovilla. So I can't actually tell details about it.
Okay, let's look back at your career, because what made you want to become a policeman in the first place?
Well, my father was a police officer. He's now retired. And, you know, I when I was young, I was rather shy, so I did what my friends did. They applied for police academy, and I applied for police academy, so I became a police officer. And, you know, I always liked people. So when you're a police officer, you deal with people all the time.
What do you think women bring to policing that's different from men?
I think we bring another sense. You know, it's even for me, I consider myself as a tough woman. If, God forbid, I was raped or I was a victim of domestic violence, if I was going to report that, I would feel more comfortable to talk about these things with a female police officer, because we kind of understand each other just by doing that. I also believe that women, we are kind of stronger in the soft approach. Because we know we are not that physical strong, so we have other means, we have other tools. That's my point of view.
And do those other tools also work effectively with men who have broken the law?
Yes, yes. I have many times talked a man to handcuff into the police car, and for sure, if he wanted to beat me, he could really beat me. Bigger, stronger, but with my skills to communicate and try, you know, other tools and means, he was kind to me.
Now, at your speech at this event, you were talking generally about the role of women in the police force and in, of course, the UN. What would be your message?
My message is that all the member states of the United Nations, we have to support the United Nations. United Nations is not a country who has its own police or own military. We are United Nations. And if we don't give United Nations the people they need, United Nations can never fulfill their task and duty on the ground with the community we are supposed to serve in. So all of us, calling and talking to our government, we need to emphasize this, that we need to support the United Nations with personnel, with high-skilled professional people.
But there are problems with the UN actually engaging particularly women policemen. So why is that?
Well, you know, I come from a country where it's completely normal to be a female police officer now. You know, nobody even talk about it anymore. It's become the normality. But in those countries who deploy like hundreds and more hundreds police officers, for example, Pakistan, for example, some Asian country and some African countries, back home, they don't have female police officers too much. They in their culture and in the society, it's not the norm. So that those countries are the ones who support the UN with a lot of numbers. But again, because of their background and the way their society is back home, they don't have those female police officers to send abroad.
And yet, in many of the areas where the UN works, particularly in refugee camps, of which, heaven knows, over the world we have so many these days, it's the presence of women police officers that is so much more effective, isn't it?
Of course. You know, the best people to talk to women, refugees in Africa, is of course African women. And this is very important for me. And they are so good at it because they have the same culture. They sing the same songs. They dance the same way. They have the same type of hair, you know. All these things, they connect immediately. They don't connect with me immediately because I look different. It has nothing to do that they don't like me, but we are not, you know, we don't speak the same way and, you know, all these things. And when I was in Afghanistan, I've been 3 times in Afghanistan, and when I have male colleagues in Afghanistan, they can normally only speak to 50% of the population, the men, because the men are never meeting the women.
And the women can't talk to male police officers unless there's a man present.
No. I could talk to 100% of the population in Afghanistan. Of course, in the rural area where you have very strict regulation, they don't want to talk to me. But in Kabul, in Bamiyan, where I've been, it's no problem. I can meet the men, and I can also meet the women. And that's the difference, because they speak to me. Not a problem. I had not any challenge dealing with Afghan police officers and colleagues.
And that presumably makes a UN police force so much more effective if you can reach the whole population.
That's why you say the police are there to serve and protect. We are there to serve and protect the community. And who is the community? Everyone.
Now, you're going back to Norway, and did I understand correctly that you're going to the police academy?
Yes.
So what will be your remit there, and knowing your interest in gender equality and encouraging Norway's already very impressive amount of women in the police force, have you got an agenda?
Well, my job in Norway is to train police officer going to UN mission. So I am there training new police officers, male and female, going to UN mission. So of course I can bring all my experience into that field.
And let's just tell people about what happens when you get on a UN mission, because it's a little bit of a sort of mystery box being opened, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You never know where you are deployed. You never know how you're going to live. You don't know who you're going to work with. You don't know nothing. You just are deployed there. You meet there, you get some induction training, and then someone tells you where to go and what to do.
Could that be improved? Would it help if you had a little bit of, let's say, a pre-posting briefing beforehand?
Yes, we do. This is the difference between police staff officers and military staff officers. Military keep positions. So, you know, maybe Norway have this and this position in the operational center in that mission, and there's always a Norwegian going into that. In the police, you're all equal. You're all in the same box. So when you come to the mission, that's when you get a task and are deployed to the sectors.
And you have suggested that it can be quite lonely, because very often you go in, particularly if it's a small unit, and there are no Norwegians there, maybe no Scandinavians there. How do you deal with that?
Well, you find solutions with yourself. You just have to deal with it. I go running. I read books. And I have a secret tool, which maybe a lot of your listeners will laugh about. But I love Walt Disney and Disney. So in the evenings, I sometimes actually read a magazine of Donald Duck. So that I just forget all the hard stuff, all the things I have to remember, and I just relax. I relax my brain into the Disney world.
And that sets you up for the next day?
Yep. Then I fall asleep, and the next day, another day.
The senior police advisor at the United Nations force in Cyprus, Ann-Kristin Kvilikval.
Get in touch with the Cyprus News Digest by emailing cyprusnewsdigest@gmail.com.
And just before I go, I have had a communication from St Paul's Anglican Cathedral in Nicosia, who've asked me to mention that they have a brand new club that's been launched. It will be meeting on the first Thursday of every month, and it starts next Thursday on the 7th of March. The meeting hours are 10 in the morning until 12 noon, and the idea is that you can learn something, make new friends, and socialise. And on the 7th of March, the speaker will be author author Patricia Jordan talking about spring in the Cyprus garden, so you can brush up on your gardening knowledge and get some useful tips, and of course over coffee make some new friends. That's the brand new Friends at St Paul's at the Anglican Cathedral. There's a €5 entrance that includes refreshments, and they're meeting for the first time next Thursday. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.